Hey everybody, Sheriff Chris Brown here with Natural State Defensive Solutions. We're going to talk to you today about setting up your duty belt for work. And so I've got an old duty belt here. This isn't the exact belt that I used to wear when I worked patrol, but it's pretty close. And a couple of pieces we've kind of put together for you so that I can give you an example of what we're doing because I haven't worn a duty belt in quite a while. So um, here's the thing: there's lots of different ways to set up your duty belt. Lots of different theories behind how that's to be done, and I'm going to give you my take on that today. So let's get into it. So this is your regular duty belt. Um, Lots of different ways to set it up. Of course, I'm right-handed, so this is going to be set up for a right-handed shooter or a right-handed person. And we're going to look at a couple of different things. We're going to look at uh, where different things should go on your belt. We're going to talk about why they should go there. And we're going to look at maybe why we would want those things in those places. And we'll kind of discuss each one of those things, maybe some alternatives as we go along with that. So the first thing that we need to figure out with your duty belt is if you're right or left-handed, because being right or left-handed makes a big difference for exactly how you're going to set your belt up. The giant rule of thumb with all of this, every time that you set something up or you move something, or if this is the first time you've ever set a duty belt up, the one thing you need to come back to over and over and over again is which hand am I going to use this tool with? And then it needs to go in a place on the belt that can be accessed by the hand that that tool um, is used by. So, for instance, if I'm right-handed, I shoot a gun right-handed. The gun ought to be where I can draw that easily with my right hand. Flashlight I use in my support hand or non-firing hand, so the flashlight should be accessible with my support hand, not not only my firing hand, right? So that's the most important thing we come back to over and over and over again. What hand do I use that tool with? And then let's set the belt up accordingly. So let's talk about specifics. Again, I'm right-handed, so I want some things on the right-hand side of my belt that I'm going to use with my right hand. Handcuffs. I handcuff people with my right hand primarily, and so the handcuffs need to be accessible with my right hand. Okay. I like having two pairs of handcuffs on a belt, and so that means for me, I need one set in front and one set behind. There are other theories. People talk about having two sets, like both of them in the small of your back. Hey, that's fine if that's what you want to do. The reason that I have one on the front and one on the back, and you can kind of see here how I have that set up. I have that set up one on either side of my holster, so that when I have that on, I have one in the front of me and one on my back. And that is for the simple reason, like sometimes we have to fight people, sometimes we have to wrestle around with people. And so I may either need to be able to access the pair of handcuffs in the front, or if I'm laying on my chest, I may need to be able to access the pair of handcuffs on my back. So I like having one of each set there. And of course, the set on the front, I can reach with either hand. That's great. And sometimes we have to handcuff more than one person. Sometimes we get somebody who's a little extra fluffy, right, and needs both sets of those handcuffs to be able to span across once they go behind the back. So carrying two sets of cuffs for me is ideal. One in front, one in back, accessible with that. Now, if you've ever been through like a handcuffing specific class, gear orientation or handcuff orientation says that the single bar should always be towards your belt buckle as they come out. That way they're oriented correctly in your hand, so you can see that both pairs of handcuffs are oriented that direction. If they were on the other side of the belt, of course, the single bar would face the other direction so that they're also oriented back. For a left-handed person, as they're drawn, they would orient toward the correct direction, toward the side of the wrist that they need to go on, right? All right, let's move further around to the holster. We're going to come back to some specifics on the holster here at the end of the video, so stay tuned for that because I got a couple little tidbits for you. But the holster should be the easiest thing to get to on that side of the belt. And I think that's really all I'm going to say about the holster at this time. We'll come back and do our own little block on the holster past that. All right, next thing is the baton. Lots of different places you can put the baton. I've seen people put it kind of here in the front where it's cross draw. That's totally fine. Um, I see a lot of people put it on their left-hand side, knowing full where they're going to use it with their right hand. I'm not a big fan of that. Like I said, the one thing we ought to come back to over and over again is put it on, put it somewhere it's accessible with the hand you're going to use that specific tool. Baton for a right-handed person is going to be a right-handed tool. This is where I found I was an ASP instructor for about 6 years. I've been through the ASP instructor curriculum, taught it and taken it several times. And I can tell you through those classes, which are very physical, that this is the most ideal place, at least for me as a right-handed person. A couple of big things though, if you have the baton right here behind your pistol, of course the pistol grip is going to come out and it's going to be here. And if we get that baton too far up into that, it may actually impede how the holster is supposed to function. So I would recommend, you can see there, I've got a keeper right in between the holster and the baton. Now, if I were putting that on a belt, like the inside of this belt doesn't have Velcro, so this is one that you would use keepers with. Even when I ran a Velcro belt, I still used keepers because I like stuff staying put. But if I was using keepers to secure the outer belt to the inner belt, the keeper would go right there. That wouldn't be a dedicated keeper. I would just make sure to have a keeper there. Or you could run a keeper there that's dedicated for that and then run you a second keeper to connect the inner and outer belts. But just have some kind of spacer there in between the baton and the holster. That's the most important part there. Now going around to the back, you'll notice I've got some keepers kind of just stored back there. And that's not really for anything other than it's convenient to keep them stored back there when the belt goes into the closet or something like that for an extended period of storage. You'll notice along the back, I don't have anything. I don't have anything because I don't like sitting against anything in the car. Okay, there are other people prefer to have a glove pouch back here or a med pouch back here. All of that's fine. That's totally user preference. I just don't like sitting against stuff. If I sit in the seat, I want to sit up against the seat and be as comfortable as I can be. We all know that wearing these things is not comfortable day in and day out. You get used to them, but they're still not comfortable. And so I don't want anything between me and the seat. So I leave the back of the belt smooth. When I do wear this, I wear typically a keeper on each side, somewhere similar to that, or maybe just a single one in the back. And you can see I've got that little hidden handcuff key in mine, just as a extra little safety measure to have back there. Coming around to this side of the belt, I have rings for a big flashlight. Rings for a big flashlight. When I get out of the car, flashlight goes into that, and then I have big flashlight. I would do that if I was on day shift or night shift. I can tell you the first time that you get stuck in a building during the middle of the day with no flashlight and don't have, like, it's a lot bigger deal in pre-smartphone times, right? That's maybe a story for a different time when I got caught in a building pre-smartphone with no flashlight and no lights inside the building. So daytime or nighttime, you see me with the duty belt on, you're going to see a flashlight in that when I get out of the car. Radio pouch is next for me. And the radio pouch, whatever kind of radio pouch you use, if you use an actual pouch or you use the twisty kind that you can separate the pouch from the keeper, or this is a tech mount where the clip on the back of the radio just slides into that and it locks it in place. It's got a little keeper there for the back of the clip. I like to have that kind of out of the way a little bit because once I have it on, wear an earpiece. Once I have that on, it pretty much just stays on. Only thing I really need to do is adjust the volume occasionally. If I have to adjust the channel, the radios we carry, that can be done from the lapel mic. And so if I need to adjust the channel past that, it's not a big deal to unclip and adjust where I need it and put it back. But for the most part, I don't use the radio past turning it on or off. And so I want that kind of out of the way where I can still get to it, but where it's not something that's in the way of other things I may need more often. All right, next is a flashlight. This is an ASP case. It's actually made for an ASP flashlight. It will also fit the Streamlight Straton. That's my light, handheld light of choice for this. What we love about this particular case is that it can rotate. So if I'm in a room, let's say, and I need that room to be light, I can turn that light up and shine the light and actually illuminate the entire room. If I'm out directing traffic in the middle of the night, I can point this down kind of behind me and turn my flashlight on, and it can illuminate my feet and kind of give people an idea that I'm there. Just a lot of really good options with that. Very, very secure. The light's not coming out of there unless you want it to. And so absolutely love having that as an option. But that's the flashlight. And that kind of goes, I'll put the belt on for you here in a minute, but that kind of goes right here on my side where it's easily accessible in and out for when I need it. And then the last thing I've got on the belt here, well, if you want to know about the hook, I always ran a, we all have like active shooter bags or something you can sling a bag on if you want. I actually ran an active shooter leg drop rig, and so I had that set up on one of these keychains with a receiver, and it had some extra rifle mags and pistol mags, and I could drop that on, throw it around my leg, and that attached there. Um, Last thing I've got on the belt before the actual buckle is the mag pouches. We have two different theories on the mag pouches, and that is as follows. So we believe that mag pouches really only belong either one of two places, and our preference is this one. So those mag pouches either belong as close to your belt buckle on your support hand side as you can get them, standing up, or if we've got a little extra of this that we're working through and we want them to lay down, then we would say swap the mag pouch and this handcuff, put the handcuff over here, swap the mag pouch to right here, lay them down where the mags are accessible from the belt buckle side. So there's a specific way to orient your magazines as well. And so if they're going to be on the support hand side of the belt buckle, we like them standing up, and we like the bullets toward the belt buckle. So they'd be oriented just like this. And the reason that we do that is so that when those magazines are drawn, they're drawn out, indexed. Different video, reload video, we'll talk about that specifically. But this way they're drawn out in the most efficient manner to get them into the gun. If you need that little bit of extra space here, and so you have the mag pouches laid down like this, we're going to have the bullets oriented up so that as I go down to draw, it's indexed in the same exact manner as if they were standing up, just laying down instead. Those are the two places that we believe mags should go. So again, when it comes to orientation, what we're really looking at is what hand do I use a tool with, and then where can I put it on the belt, one, to make sure that the hand that I draw that with is the hand that I'm going to use that tool with, but then what's the most easily accessible, what's the most efficient, what's the best place to have that to ensure that I can draw that consistently and use it consistently when I need it. I see a ton of people, they like to put their flashlight right here where I have the baton, and that sounds like a good plan. I mean, if you're going to run your flashlight with your weapon hand, which when you go through any academy everywhere, you're always told not to do that, right? Your weapon hand is for your weapon and for nothing else. But I've seen a lot of people that like to run their flashlight where the baton is, and just usually ask them, if I've got my gun out and then I decide I need my flashlight, how do I get to that, right? And the simple answer is most of the time I can't. So I need to think about what tool or what hand I'm going to use that tool with. I need to set the belt up so that that tool is accessible with the hand that's going to use it. That is a quick and dirty run on duty belt setup. Now I'll say this too. I've got a couple of other belts here with me, and these are range belts. So this is a Core Essentials belt I have set up specifically for the range, and so you'll see that doesn't have handcuff pouches on it, doesn't have a baton pouch, does have a med pouch, and a dump pouch, right? Some things that I use specifically on the range. Guys, I use range belts more these days than I do a regular duty belt, and so these are what I typically wear. So these are more set up for what I need now. So that's the Core Essentials belt. This is the Point Blank belt, and I've actually already done a review on this belt. So if you guys want to watch that, it is a couple of videos back, and this is a really phenomenal belt. Both of these belts are, but this is a really phenomenal belt. Really good pouches. This is also set up for the range, and this is what I use when I teach a lot. And so a couple of great options for you there, but they're set up different because my needs are different for classes like that, right? So these are things that can evolve and change over time based on the exact need or the exact role I'm filling at the time. I can tell you that the other half of Natural State Defensive Solutions, Matt Higgins, he and I haven't worked together in a patrol capacity in 10 years. But if we got together and I took this belt and I asked him to bring his belt in, these two belts would look, this belt and his belt would look almost identical to each other because we've just been through so much of this and so many different iterations of what a belt does and should look like and how it's most efficient set up that we have figured out that this platform really does just work the best. So here's a pro tip for you on using the belt, getting the belt set up. Stuff now again, like I put this together for the video, but if you'll see here, like these mag pouches, these aren't mag pouches I would necessarily wear on a duty belt like this, but they move quite a bit. And that's obviously much more than I would want them to move if I was still working in a patrol capacity. And so we recommend using black zip ties. In fact, you can still see I have got a black zip tie on there, and that would have been for probably limiting how far back that set of handcuffs could go. And so we use zip ties to secure everything because here's the truth is when I have that belt on, I don't want stuff moving, right? If I get into a scuffle, I get up and I need to access a tool, I want it to be in the same exact place it was before the scuffle started. Best way to do that is to make sure I have a good inner belt, a good outer belt, and that the stuff on the belt is secured and good quality. So that is basic patrol belt or duty belt setup. We'll come back in just a minute and I'll have all this stuff on and we're going to talk about holster placement. All right, so now we're back to talk about holster placement and orientation. And we're going to do this with the duty belt, and then we're going to do this again with one of the gun belts so you can kind of see the difference, or the range belts that I use. So you can kind of see the difference. The range belts, the holster sits a little bit lower for me in a little bit different spot. I'm going to show you both. All right, so now that I have the belt on, you can see belt buckle is lined up. If you don't know about gig lines, maybe a different video for that, but pay attention to your gig line. Let's look professional out there, okay? Handcuff in front, gun, handcuff in back, baton, flashlight rings, radio mount, flashlight, and then our mags oriented in the proper orientation, okay? So how do I put, or where do I put my holster, right? Where do I need to put it? And how does it need to be oriented? Now, when you get a Safariland holster or some of these other holsters, when they the bag shows up, you take it out of the bag, you put it on your belt. They come in a forward cant of about 10 degrees. So that gun is canted forward at about 10 degrees. And that's how the holster comes set up. And most of us just throw the holster on the belt just like that. We rock on. We don't really ever know the difference. But if you pay attention to guys that wear their holster like that out on the range, when they go to draw the gun, they have to lean forward to get their arm lined up with the holster to get the gun out of the holster. Maybe slight, but they pretty much all do it. So let's talk about what it looks like to set that holster up in a place and in an orientation that works specifically for you. We're going to customize it for you just a little bit. So that holster orientation, that 10-degree forward cant, came from the FBI cant. So way back when, right, the FBI used to wear their holsters kind of at that 4:30 or 5 o'clock position so they could keep it hidden under their jacket. And if I take my hand and I line it up at my belt buckle and I start moving it around my belt, you can kind of see how my elbow and the angle of my arm changes as it moves further around. And as I get around to about that 4:30 or 5 o'clock position, that 10-degree forward cant is the right angle to be able to effectively draw the gun out of that holster. Well, the problem is we don't wear our gun in that spot anymore when we go to patrol, right? It's much more in at least a 3 o'clock position, but for most of us, it's actually going to be forward of 3 o'clock and I'm going to show you how to figure out exactly where your holster should go right now. So we're going to do a couple of different tests. First test we're going to do, we're just going to lift our arms up in the air and let them fall down. Okay, and we're going to do that a couple of times, make sure we have a consistent spot. And what I'm looking for is for my arm to fall into a spot and my gun should be in that spot, right? So if my arms go up and down and they fall right here, well, my gun is not in that spot, so I would need to adjust the gun a little further forward. And I'll tell you, most of us are going to be in that between 2 and 3 o'clock range. So for me, you can see I'm just slightly forward of 3 o'clock, about 2:30 or so. And if I lift my arms up and drop them down, that's exactly where my hand falls. Now for orientation, we're going to do the same thing that we just did. Take your hand, put it on your belt buckle with that straight line, and then start moving it around. And when I get around to the spot where the gun is, that is the orientation or the angle that the gun should be at. Okay, so if you'll notice for me, this one's not quite as tilted back as you'll see that my range belt is. So this one would probably need a little bit more adjustment, and there are some products out there that help you to get that holster to adjust back. Even the new Safariland holsters are coming with the ability to cant them back just a little bit. You can basically get them to 0 or maybe -1 degree or so. Places like True North Concepts, Black Box Customs with Centrifuge Training makes a negative cant plate, makes several different versions of it. RDR Gear, in fact, RDR Gear is the one I'm running on this holster right here. They make a version to help you get that holster at least to 0 degrees, but in some cases, all the way back to even -10 degrees, which is pretty extreme on the other side, right? I typically fall somewhere probably in the 4 to 5 degree range. I think this is just shy of that, and so it actually needs to be canted a little bit more. I'll show you what that looks like when we get the other holster or the other belts out here in just a minute. But that's the test. That's all it is. Arm test to figure out where on the belt the holster should go. Straight arm, work it around, and when it gets around to where you draw, that's the angle. You can see it from the side. That's the angle that the gun should be at to most efficiently draw, where I don't have to have a lot of what we call frenetic movement to get the gun out of the holster, right? So that's holster orientation with a duty belt. Let me swap into this other belt and I'll show you what it looks like on the range belt real quick so that you can see the difference. Because like I said, the range belts, my holster sits a little bit lower. Not very much, but just a little bit lower, and I would like you to see the difference on that too. So stay tuned, we'll be right back. All right, so now we're back with the range belt, and as you can see, this setup is just a little bit different than the regular duty belt that we had just a minute ago. So the holster sits just a little bit lower, and we'll talk about maybe how low a drop leg can go here in a second. But everything as far as how I access it is still the same as it was with the duty belt, right? Magazines are still oriented the same exact way as they were on the duty belt. Gun is in the same place still, right? Maybe a little bit further forward, but if it's a little bit further forward, that's because it's also a little bit lower. And as my arms fall down, that arm is angled a little bit more, a little further forward. And so it's appropriate for the gun to sit just a little bit further forward. Now, as I do my same test again here, so straight arm, elbows here, and I start working that around from the buckle. Now, when we get around to the side here, the angle of my arm and the angle of the holster line up so that as I go to draw the gun out, that is in line with how my arm already is like facing, right? So I don't have to do all this extra frenetic movement to get the gun out. Now, how far down should I wear a drop leg, right? Because you notice I have a leg strap on this holster. I don't on my duty belt. That's because this holster sits a little bit lower, and typically duty belts are going to be a little bit more rigid than a range belt or a thinner gun belt like this. So that leg strap just gives me a little bit more stability when I draw against the holster and that platform. So how far down should that leg drop go? You see, guys, they have like the you remember the old Safariland, or I guess still the current Safariland drop leg system, has a big placard. That placard goes on your leg. It comes up, it has a quick release buckle that sits in between the holster and the belt, so you can get that off. And then it's got the two big leg straps. And guys wind up wearing them all the way down here on their leg, so that when they go to draw, they got to do this, or even if their hand is next to it, they're still having to kind of do this to get down there to the gun. When they run, that thing slides all over the place. It looks horribly uncomfortable, and that's because it is horribly uncomfortable. So what's the correct way to orient that thing for us? And I think to answer that question, we first have to understand what the purpose of the drop leg holster is. And the purpose of the drop leg holster is just to get the equipment far enough away from your big outer vest or tack vest or whatever the case is. The drop leg holster is to move that down just far enough to be able to clear all of that, so that as you're drawing the gun, it's not hitting all of that equipment or that vest that's on the outside. The drop leg isn't there to be able to run the thing, at your knee or your ankle or something like that. It's just there to help us clear all of that gear that we now wear. Most of us now wear outer vests. Most of all of us have transitioned to those outer vests. So having the holster a little further out or a little further down, or maybe a combination of the two, makes sense, okay? So how far down is too far down? I'm going to give you a test, right? I want to be able, I'm going to pull my sleeves up here a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. I want to be able to get to the gun without having to straighten my arm all the way out, right? You come through one of our classes, and we talk about using energy to get the gun out of the holster where we're more efficient, and it's going to require me to not have my arm straight trying to get the gun out of the holster, okay? So I want this to be down far enough to clear my equipment, but not so far down that I'm having to go find it like on a fishing expedition every time I need to get the gun out, right? Here's a little simple test you can do to figure out how far down your holster can safely go before really it's probably too far down. And that is, we're just going to make an L with our hand, just like that. And if we stand up, we do the L. That L should be able to run under the bottom of our holster, just like that. So mine could even stand to come up just a little tiny bit, but it's pretty close to right where I want it, right? I make my L, put it under the holster. I'm still standing pretty normal, and that L is right underneath the holster. So that's about as low as I can realistically go before I need to, or before I would have to start making some adjustments to actually get the gun out. So again, L, if I stand normal, put the L underneath the holster. As long as that L is there, that is in a good spot. Wanted to point out too, keepers. Do keepers go up or do keepers go down? And the truth is, you can do it either way, right? You can orient the keepers to where they button up or where they button down. Really doesn't make a difference. It's a matter of convenience for me. I prefer my keepers with the opening at the top, because that way whatever keepers I've got on my back when I sit down in my chair aren't coming undone. I watch guys that wear them the other way. Every time they sit down in the car, those keepers come undone. When they get back out of the car, they have to fasten them back. Doesn't make any sense to me to do that. If they're oriented with the opening at the top, every time you sit down, they're not getting snagged by stuff. And if you don't have a fancy little key keeper like this one here, you can always use the belt keeper, that top button on the belt keeper, to be your key holder in a pinch. Can't do that if they're oriented down, because if it comes open, you may be out in the snow searching for keys like we would be today here. So I hope these tips helped for setting up your duty belt or your range belt or just your equipment in general. You can apply all of these same concepts to your outer vest. All that equipment, still have to figure out which hand you're going to use it with, and it should still orient the same up on the vests as well. But I hope this all helped. If you have any questions, reach out and we're happy to help you. And until we see you next time, stay safe.